CCP! CCP! No games! No games! Beijing Olympics! People die! People die! CCP! CCP! CCP! No games! No games! No games! Beijing Olympics! Beijing Olympics! Beijing Olympics! No games! No games! No games! CCP! CCP! CCP!
People die!
No games! Beijing Olympics! Beijing Olympics!
Beijing Olympics!
Freedom! Freedom! Now! People die! People die! CCP! CCP! CCP! CCP! CCP!
No right!
No games!
No right!
No games!
No right!
No games!
Boycott!
Beijing Olympics! Beijing Olympics!
No right!
No games! No games!
No right!
No games!
No right!
No games!
Boycott!
Beijing Olympics!
Boycott!
Beijing Olympics!
China life!
People die!
China life!
People die!
China life!
People die!
Shame on
CCP!
Shame on
CCP!
Shame on
CCP!
Down, down!
CCP!
No right!
No game!
No right!
No game!
Boycott!
Beijing Olympics!
Boycott!
Beijing Olympics!
No right!
No games!
No right!
No games!
No right!
No games!
No right!
No games! Beijing Olympics! Beijing Olympics! Free Tibet! Free Tibet! Free Hong Kong! Free Hong Kong! Free Turkestan! Free Turkestan! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Now! Now! Now! Free Hong Kong! Free Turkestan! Free Tibet! People die! People die! People die! People die! CCP! CCP! CCP! CCP! CCP! No game! No game! No game! Beijing Olympics! Beijing Olympics! Beijing Olympics!
alive.
People die.
Stand alive.
People die.
Down, down.
Mississippi.
Down, down. Down, down.
Mississippi.
Shame on.
Mississippi.
Shame on.
Mississippi.
No right.
No death.
No right.
No death.
Boycott, boycott.
Beijing Olympics.
Boycott, boycott.
Beijing Olympics.
Boycott, boycott.
Beijing Olympics.
No right.
No death.
No right.
No death.
No.
Hazır Londondaki insan hakları günü bilen o'rinlashtirilgan bu birleşme namayiş Tashqi ishlar ministrligining oldida davomlashyapti.
Thank you all for being here tonight. This is the last stop today. This afternoon, Uyghur groups, Tibet groups and Hong Kongers met at 2:30 outside the Chinese embassy. After we protested outside the Chinese embassy, we then went to the BBC to put pressure on them to stop the broadcast of the genocide games. And now we're glad that as many of you came out today to be with us here together in strength. We now have 3 guest speakers here. One speaker on behalf of the Tibetan community in Britain. We've invited one of our youth speakers to give them the opportunity to speak. And so I'd like to invite Titzraka here.
Hello. Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
The Chinese embassy keep saying that like those are going to the games.
I'd like to start by saying thank you to the video for to allow me to talk on behalf of today on human rights. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces, many new faces as well. To come show support and solidarity for one another. Some faces I recognize from the 2008 Beijing Olympics already. I was only a child at the time when my father was representing to the background. So we gave interviews and media speeches with the best. So growing up I knew somewhat of it, although I did spend some of my childhood wondering why I had so much of this time, why I did so much of that struggle. But I didn't understand the incredible weight that was on my shoulders. And the immense pressures to face daily during this time that I took the And now that I'm older, educated and more aware of the fight of my people, the Chinese occupied Tibet, I understand the sacrifices my dad made to pursue the struggle for freedom and dignity. It's a sacrifice not easily made, but that some of you are here and willingly made for your own causes which are completely fine. On the subject of human rights, we must never forget or ignore the abuses and atrocities taking place in Tibet, Xinjiang, Hong Kong, in Mongolia and China itself. In Tibet, new policies have been implemented to further prevent young students from learning their own language, being educated by those that speak and understand their mother tongue. In a recent detailed report by Tibet Action Institute, it uncovered that nearly 80% of all Tibetan children have been separated from their homes and families and forcibly sent to colonial boarding schools undergoing Sinization, forced assimilation, and political sociological indoctrination. Local Tibetan schools in their villages and towns, online language sites have also been shut down, with local teachers being sent far off. This is all in a malicious maneuver to further eradicate the Tibetan identity and deny future generations of their birthright. The rights of Tibetans to freely practice religion is also heavily controlled and monitored in temples, monasteries and mosques all throughout Tibet. Fear reigns as Tibetans worries of spies and state agents quietly policing them in their holy places of peace and worship. The Panchen Lama, one of the highest figures of Tibetan society and Buddhism, second to only the Dalai Lama, also the youngest political prisoner who was kidnapped at the age of 6, has been supplanted by a puppet replacement, a state tool they believed would influence Buddhist affairs and encourage loyalty to the party. To this day, there is no certainty of his whereabouts, his safety, or whether or not he is alive. China also insists on having oversight of the Dalai Lama's successor, despite his reaffirmation that China has no say in this process and that Tibetans and Buddhists around the world would refuse to acknowledge a Dalai Lama appointed by the CCP. Since Xi Jinping's takeover as the new party head, fears have heightened. The ability and willingness to speak out has been greatly affected by the digital as the digital age progresses. Censorship and monitoring is much more efficient at identifying and punishing those with dissenting thoughts through the Great Firewall. But to those traveling abroad, this not only applies to Tibetans living within China and Tibet, but to those traveling abroad for holiday and studies. I know of a few Tibetans who have come to the UK for studies. They are reluctant to meeting with other Tibetans or mingling within the community in general. It's the fear that there may be spies or state agents within the community that will report back to authorities in the Chinese embassy or directly to the mainland. And it's also the inability to trust their fellow Tibetan, something that has been conditioned and programmed them into them from their experiences in Tibet. That's not to say these fears are not rational. As we have seen in New York and Switzerland, Tibetans being arrested for espionage and spying on behalf of the Chinese state. China does indeed like to keep tabs on the Tibetan diaspora in exile, attempting to subvert and undermine us at any moment. Even with Chimi Lamo, a student activist in Toronto, during her time as student president, she had coordinated attacks launched against her from pro-CCP students. This ranged from constant verbal attacks, harassment, and direct threats made against her and her family. However, her resolve and strength, then and now, embodies the determined Tibetan spirit we all share, our dream to see the Tibetan struggle fulfilled. The rights of the Tibetan people to preserve and protect their environment has also been violated. Historically, Tibet's environment has been taken care of and maintained by its own people for thousands of years. We know the land, soil, snow and rocks better than anyone. But now it is on the brink of an unnatural disaster. Known as the rooftop of the world and the third pole, it supplies water to almost half of the world's population. It houses Asia's 7 major rivers high up in the plateau, and with China recklessly mining and fracking Tibet's natural land and resources and building almost over 20,000 superstructure water dams all along the rivers and connecting streams, this water is now at risk. It risks contamination. Countries and land downstreams either risk severe drought and famine if China cuts off their supply, or severe flooding due to an access and build-up of water. For instance, the Three Gorges Dam, which during its construction had submerged swaths of land, displacing millions of inhabitants. Tibet is also melting at an alarming rate, 3 times anywhere else in the world. Yet when climate change is discussed on an international stage with intended cooperation, Tibet is left in the back seat, forgotten or intentionally ignored due to fears of upsetting China. This was evident in Glasgow recently for COP26. The Free Tibet organization had plans to make use of a billboard, but this was denied by local authorities as they deemed the theme too political. Since when was caring for the environment ever political? I'd like to bring your attention to brave Tibetan environmental activists Karma Samduk and Anya Sengda, and the many more who sacrificed everything for meaningful impacts on environmental policy in Tibet. Karma Samduk was sentenced to 15 years in prison, despite his claim that guards had tortured him to extract a forced confession, and being charged for a case that had been dropped 12 years prior by police. Falsifying and manufacturing charges aren't the only forms of miscarriages of justice, as Anya Sengda, a prominent figure in his community, was imprisoned without trial and detention extended without cause. The list of human rights abuses are endless and will continuously grow unless serious action is taken by governments and corporations who partner with China. As they are complicit with the crimes of the Chinese state, they should never be allowed to feel a moment's rest without knowing no amount of good PR and press will let them get away with the blood on their hands. I'd like to end by thanking all of the groups and individuals coming out today. I hope our communities can collaborate on a deeper, meaningful level, learning and experiencing from one another to build a stronger, united front, so that any challenges or struggles we face from now on, we won't face alone, but standing side by side with our brothers. Thank you very much.
Let's go!
Yes, free everyone hear me? Yeah. I need a bit of light, I think. Light has to come this way. Light come to this way. Yeah, thank you so much. Friends, thank you for joining us on International Human Rights Day outside the FCDO to demand better from this government. Each of our communities, Tibetans, Hong Kongers, Uyghurs, have faced great suffering as a result of the international community's silence and inaction of the Chinese government's atrocities. We are all painfully aware of the human cost of indifference. My people, the Uyghurs, have been fighting for our rights and freedoms for decades, but our pleas fell on deaf ears. And so, unrestrained, the Chinese government's repression and violent crackdowns turned into surveillance and mass detention, and now we are facing genocide. Our people in our own homeland are forced to endure the worst of humanity: forced sterilization, forced labor, torture, rape, even organ harvesting. And still, governments and institutions around the world don't act. The IOC is one of the greatest offenders, now entirely complicit in the CCP's crimes. We have finally achieved a diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, thanks to the hard work of human rights activists and friendly politicians. But still, we demand a much tougher statement from the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary. They must make sure the Chinese authorities understand that they will face consequences for their continued human rights abuses. They must say loud and clear that the democratic crackdown in Hong Kong, cultural erasure in Tibet, and genocide in East Turkestan have made it impossible for officials to attend the Winter Games. They must make it clear that they stand firmly with our communities. Yesterday, the Independent Uyghur Tribunal found the Chinese government guilty of committing torture, crimes against humanity, and genocide against the Uyghurs and other Turkic groups. A body of evidence has been amassed documenting the Chinese regime's numerous, historic, and wide-reaching human rights abuses in my homeland of East Turkestan. So, this evening, we are also here to demand the UK government recognizes the tribunal's judgment and to demand and the legal responsibilities it entails as signatories of the Genocide Convention. The UK has a moral and a legal obligation to protect our community from destruction. So today I urge the UK government to stand up for the Uyghur people, or they will remember not for what they did, but for the fact they did nothing. Thank you.
China is guilty of genocide. China guilty of genocide. China is guilty of genocide. China is guilty of genocide. Shame on CCP. Shame on CCP. Shame on CCP. Free East Turkestan. Free East Turkestan. Free East Turkestan. Free East Turkestan. Free East Turkestan. Free East Turkestan.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Good evening, everyone here. I'm looking at a lot of minor ethnicity and organizations gathered here tonight in London. Not because we have failed and failed our own country. It's because of hope. It's because of that mission can be done. Because of still need to fight for the human rights and against our same enemy, the CCP tyranny. I'm Freeman Windes from Britain in Hong Kong. I'm honored to be here as the BHK representative, as one of the co-hosts this event. Our previous experience, unity is our top priority. The joint statement made by 50 groups is a solid signal of our unity, and it really strengthens our bond. As long as we united, this is achievable. Some of us here are British national overseas. We are also British to most countries in the world, but that doesn't exclude us from the recent and ongoing suppression from China. As long as we stand for our own identity, there will be wars to fight. We gather here because we sincerely hope the British government can work on concrete and effective actions to respond to act for the CCP's human rights violations. What we see from today, the government is far from enough. Meanwhile, there are lots of promise and missions discussed in the Summit of Democracy. We urge more countries in the world to boycott the Winter Olympics taking place in China. Before I finish, if what we are doing become reality one day, I would love to invite you to visit Hong Kong, the place once I call home, which unfortunately I can no longer return, similar to you. To every one of us, that's our home is no longer our home. I believe that Hong Kongers are the latest group to join. However, we won't be the last one to stand up and fight against CCP. Free Tibet! Free East Tuscan! Free Hong Kong! Thank you. Thank you.
Free Hong Kong! Free Tibet! Free East Pakistan! Thank you.
Stand with Hong Kong! Stand with Hong Kong! Stand for Hong Kong! What do we want? What do we want? When do we want it? When do we want it? When do we want it? Shame on! Shame on! Shame on! Shame on! No rights! No rights! No rights! No rights! Boycott! Boycott! Boycott! Boycott! Boycott! Boycott! Boycott! Boycott! Boycott! Boycott! Boycott! Boycott!
各位手就好。我知道幾日之前喺 Chinatown 我哋遇到一啲嘅事情，喺呢一度我哋絕對會跟進。我係其中一位嘅受害者，俾佢哋懸紅，所以喺當時已經即刻報警。實際上咧，英國嘅警方包括反恐及國安嘅部門會嚴肅地處理呢一件事。所以有任何無論喺英國任何嘅地方，唔同嘅聲音、唔同嘅集會，就算喺同一個地方，都絕對應該被尊重。但係如果喺民主嘅角度，
如越法律嘅底線，我哋必須要督促英國政府喺呢一方面採取嚴肅嘅行動。所以下星期我係會去蘇格蘭場重新提交有關嘅證據，要求英國嘅當局針對所有流散社區嘅群體，包括我哋香港人，絕對保障我哋嘅安全。有任何新嘅狀況，我會即刻同大家報告。I want to give a report to all of you in this rally. About weeks ago, unfortunate violence happens in Chinatown. We can see the protests and rallies happen in the same place. It's very essential in the freedom and democratic politics. It's always wrong to avoid speculation. But let's be clear, a bunch of mountains of fighting and that mountain was attacked. Try to attack some of the counter-captors. The town police stopped investigation. And afterwards, we also saw some screenshots on WeChat. These revolve the conflict on some activists, and one of those is late. That's why I report to the police and take its instruments to the National Security Department and counter-terrorism department. I want to ensure all viewers in here, we should have our own freedom to speak something we can't say back in our hometown. Because here, in the UK, they live up to the promise of the freedom to Hong Kong people. And some of us, coming here using BNO, British National Overseas Visa to come here. We should also ensure the safety and freedom in the UK. So that's why here I want to promise all of you, you should have your freedom and securities in here. And I will ensure with the UK government that your security should be protected. We need to get to the bottom of it. Who and which organisation has any connections with the state-sponsored hate upon us? Then we need to get to the bottom of it. Because all civilized countries in here will not tolerate at all. Zero tolerance. So here I want to promise you. Go for Hego! Go for Hego! Please enjoy your freedom of speech in here. Thank you so much.
Hello? Okay, guys. I just want to make a quick announcement. I've just been notified that the Victoria line and the Circle line are on strike from 8 o'clock. Central line and Circle line. Sorry, Central and Victoria. Sorry. Central line and Victoria are shutting down in a few minutes, just to let you know. Also, thank you so much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. We need to keep coming out like this. We've got 2 months till the Beijing Winter Games. The next organised global joint protest is January 4th. January 4th marks the 1-month countdown to Beijing Games, to the Genocide Games. So save it in your diaries. Come out in force. We need to be loud and clear. Boycott Beijing Games! Boycott Beijing Games! Boycott Beijing Games! Boycott Beijing Games! Boycott Beijing Games! What do we want? Freedom! What do we want? Freedom! When do we want it? Now! When do we want it? Now! When do we want it? Now! Also, big up to you for literally in every community right now in the Uyghur community, Tibetan community, Hong Kong community. There are fears of speaking out. There are fears. But those who have no fear, speak. Take this opportunity to speak. There will be media, there will be opportunities. Practice your soundbite, even if it's just one sentence. We need to take every opportunity we get. Tell your friends, tell your colleagues what is going on. Shame on! CCP! Shame on! CCP! Shame on! CCP! Shame on! CCP! Shame on! CCP! What do we want?
Freedom!
When do we want it?
No!
When do we want it?
No!
When?
No!
When?
No!
China, China, China!
Out, out, out!
China, China, China!
Out, out, out!
Free East Turkestan!
Free East Turkestan!
Free East Turkestan!
Free East Turkestan!
Free Hong Kong!
Free Hong Kong!
Free Hong Kong!
Free Hong Kong!
Free Hong Kong!
Free Hong Kong!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Free Tibet!
Hands off Taiwan!
Hands off Taiwan!
Hands off Taiwan!
Hands off Taiwan!
Free Southern Mongolia!
Free Southern Mongolia!
Free Southern Mongolia!
Free Southern Mongolia!
Free Southern Mongolia!
Free Southern Mongolia!
Hands off Taiwan!
Hands off Taiwan!
Hands off Taiwan!
Hands off Taiwan!
Shame on!
CCP!
Shame on!
CCP!
What do we want?
Freedom!
When do we want it?
Now!
When?
Now!
When?
Now!
Boycott, boycott!
Beijing Olympics!
Boycott, boycott!
Beijing Olympics!
Okay, save the date, January 4th. Save the date, January 4th. Save it in your diaries, tell your friends. Information will be coming out shortly. Okay? Thank you guys. Have a good night.
Assalamu alaikum. Ekranınızdaki barlı kardeşler. Angliya, Londonda İnsan Hakları Günü münasebeti bilen saat 6'da başlangan bu namayiş hazır akırlaştı. Dikkat kılıp görgünler rahmet. Bugün günü olan hoş olsun.